Hi everybody, my name is Catherine Strawley and I'm a member of the Who's Accountable team. Today we have Murli Kanathathali with us to interview and give us a little bit of insight. Murli recently graduated from her undergrad at UVA this past May and will be returning this fall to work towards her Master of Public Health. In addition, Murli will be working as a senior resident advisor and also as a case investigator with our local health department in the Thomas Jefferson Health District. So thank you so much, Murli, for taking the time to interview with us today. I guess just to start us off, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and your interest in public health?
Sure. Thank you for having me on today. So I got interested in public health after doing some work with the Center for Global Health as an undergrad, and that kind of gave me an intro into the field, and I really enjoyed it. So I decided to come back to UVA, and if anything, it's a very relevant field to get into at this time. And yeah, so I think your intro was great. That's exactly what I do.
And is there a person or group of people that you're particularly concerned about during this time? And how has this affected your own personal commitment to taking the precautions and taking those safety measures?
Yeah, there's quite a couple different groups of people that I can think of that I'm more concerned about, especially with the whole return to school. For sure, people that are at risk, higher risk with the virus, whether that's having pre-existing conditions or being in contact with at-risk populations. That's definitely something I'm worried about as residents come back to the dorms and we're all kind of in smaller spaces. Another big one I think for this year is going to be working with students that have mental health concerns. I think that's going to be a huge area of focus for both housing at UVA, for public health all around Charlottesville. Just being more aware of how the virus can impact mental health generally and how we've all kind of changed our lives significantly in the last couple months and how people would have different strategies of coping with that. I know when I think about housing, I need to be more aware as I go into this year, along with other RAs, about being on the lookout for residents that are struggling with mental health, especially when you think that we might not be having as much face-to-face interaction. So I think that would be one of the most concerning or worried groups that I'm thinking about, just trying to be on top of that idea of looking at mental health and being aware of it changing over the next semester.
Given that you are involved in residence life, what kind of precautions do you propose to promote the safety of residents in your dorms this year?
Yeah, I think we've definitely gone into this year trying to think of how we can support residents best, especially since the dorms might be one of the few areas that especially incoming first years might have to socialize, and kind of keeping that in mind. So as far as taking precautions in the dorms, we'll have all of the standard precautions of wearing masks inside, having hand sanitizer. All UVA students, at least returning to dorms, will get sanitizing solution. And there's limits on gatherings. No guests are allowed now. The kitchens are closed and lounges are limited. So those kind of logistical policies are already in place, but I think it's going to be a little bit more work for us to figure out how we're going to respond to those policies. So I know that we can't all meet in person as a hall, but we still want to be able to interact with each other, allow residents to know each other, make those friend groups and communities. So I think as far as housing goes, we're going to have a lot more focus on creating programming and events that are inclusive to a wide variety of social types of gatherings. So it's going to take a lot of gauging your residents' level of comfort in terms of how comfortable you are, whether it's being outside or inside in more distant spaces. A little more focus on virtual programming. So how can we make something like Zoom or other platforms or games more interactive? We've talked a lot about how Zoom fatigue is probably going to be a big issue into the semester, where you're already spending who knows how many hours on Zoom for classes to begin with. So trying to make things more interactive, more of a conversation instead of presenting things through programming. We've talked about lots of different ideas, whether that's having people host shows or have their own podcast each week, or just something to encourage group discussions and allow people to make friend groups and socialize without having to risk transmitting the virus. And I think it'll be interesting. RAs and ResDef will have a lot of thinking to go into this for the semester, but it'll definitely be a whole community effort. You need the residents to be as much engaged in your programming as you do the RAs. So I think it'll be a lot of working on both sides to get everyone to find a new way to socialize.
As students do return to grounds, given that you're both involved in residence life and with the health department, what are your hopes for how case investigation will look and how that will be perceived by students?
I think as far as bringing case investigation to UVA and contact tracing and all that goes with that, my biggest hope is that students understand that it's like a tool and honestly our best bet at improving public health, and just being willing to follow those guidelines on isolating, on quarantining. I think it's also important to recognize that there's like a lot of stigma around getting coronavirus at this point. I know people are definitely afraid to share that they've had it. People are afraid to share that they've tested or what their test results are. And so because of that fear of spreading it to your friends, and not wanting to be at blame for getting someone sick. And I realize that case investigation, contact tracing does require a lot of people to open up and be willing to say, I've had it and this is who I've been around. And so I just hope that students are able to kind of realize and recognize that it's going to be an essential part of going into the semester. And if anything, it's a tool to help us more than it is anything else. It's really just our best bet at reducing transmission and keeping us as safe as we can. So I just hope students come back to grounds ready to embrace it and aware of it might not be ideal, but if everyone can actually embrace this idea, use the apps, that kind of thing, then we'll be going into this as prepared as we can be.
As students return to grounds, and specifically as first years may come to grounds for the first time, do you have any words of encouragement for these new students who need to adjust their expectations for the start of their college given this very unique time?
Yeah, definitely. I think it's especially important for first years, just because it's hard. You want to go into college and thinking that you're going to start this whole new area of your life, and it can be really hard to find friend groups and socializing. And now we're in this kind of pandemic where making friend groups and socializing is not a great idea at all times. So especially for the first years, I think it's important to remember that we all know that this is going to be an untraditional like whole year, but there are still so many avenues that exist for you to start your college career. Every single club I know of, every single department at UVA is like adjusting to this new semester and new way of living. And so the avenues for how you're going to find your friends and how you're going to find your career and all of that might look different, but they definitely are still there. And so I think it'll be a great time for first years to just start getting involved as they can, staying informed about things. And if there's a club you're interested in, I'm sure it's got a version that is going to work for this semester. So just go in excited about it. And yeah, I think there'll be plenty of things to do.
Well, thank you so much, Merle, for joining us with the Who's Accountable team.
Yeah, thanks for having me.